means truth. So tell me about your spiritual journey.
Guys, what's going on? This is The Conduit on Spotify, Apple, and YouTube with the Tattva Tuesday spiritual interview series. I am so excited for my guest today. Christine Ellis is here. I'm just so excited to have you. I know that, we've kind of crossed paths recently. And I've really enjoyed my interactions and conversations with you, as well as getting some readings from you. They have been really incredible and clear and just high vibrational. So I'm so excited that you're here today. How are you?
I'm good. How are you? Hi, everybody.
Hi.
I'm excited.
I'm good. I'm excited. We were just joking before we started recording that this is the third time that we have not tried to podcast, but with the eclipse energy and Mercury retrograde, I messed up the date and time. And then so I'm just so excited that we're finally able to connect. It's 11:11 right now.
Oh, cool.
I'm saying that.
Perfect.
Yeah, angel numbers. So excited that we're finally connecting. And a friend of mine, Sean Jones, who's been on the podcast before, and I've been friends with him for, I don't even know how long I've been friends with him. He actually gave me our contact information because I was talking to him about how I had this interest in merging metaphysical, spiritual with wellness, with the medical field. And he said that you would be the perfect person to talk to. So we have talked, and I'm just so excited for you to share your truth and share your story. So let's start there. Let's start.
First of all, Sean's awesome. So yeah, it was a good referral.
Oh yeah, he's awesome. I was just actually talking to him last night a little bit and a little bit this morning. Our paths him and I have very parallel paths. It's so interesting, but bless him. Thank you, Sean, for introducing me to Christine. So let's get started with your spiritual journey.
Okay. So it's funny. I kind of feel like it's my life story a little bit, but sort of an abbreviated or more focused version. I'm psychic medium. I did not recognize myself as that, however, until I was well into my 30s. And I actually was super psychic as a child. I was born very psychic. I used to see ghosts in my bedroom. They looked very real to me. I would get them mixed up with living people at times, and then they would disappear. And that's how I would know that they weren't really there. And, like a lot of psychic kids, it was scary. I was terrified. I slept with the nightlight on. I wanted these things out of my house and out of my room. I didn't want to have these experiences. And unfortunately for me, the adults in my life were not able to support my gifts and had their own responses and reactions. I had one parent who was very intuitive and was like, hey, congratulations, you got the family curse. Good luck with that. But believed in me, believed what I was saying was real and was true, which was helpful. And then my other parent thought that it just was scary and felt like, they were always worried that I was going to be evil or something was going to be bad or wrong with me. And then at times just thought that I was crazy. So, and then the two of them kind of clashed about that. So it was a lot of tension. And as I started getting older, it's kind of cute when you're little, but when you start getting like 7, 8, 9, 10, you're still having these, paranormal experiences, it starts to get parents a little more nervous and it starts to get weird. You start to become aware, like, I'm not like other people aren't having these things. And like a lot of kids, I really shut it down. And I just remember praying and being like, God, take this away. I don't want to see scary things. And it's causing so much tension. It's causing a lot of problems. And I was able to block out a lot after that. I kind of pretended like I just didn't have it. And but I couldn't turn it all the way off. So I knew I was intuitive. I knew that because I would have psychic dreams. I would just know things about people. I was a really, really good judge of character, which unfortunately sometimes you get a little gaslit because your intuition is telling you somebody's not a good person, and everybody around you like, why, they're so wonderful. And you're like, I don't know. I don't know what it is. I feel something, something's not right. And most of the time, eventually I would be validated in what I was picking up. So I learned to trust my gut. But I certainly did not think that I was psychic. I grew up watching like Sylvia Browne on Montel Williams, and I thought she was amazing. And I certainly didn't realize I was a medium. I had not connected with loved ones on the other side who had crossed over. I had only had experiences with ghosts. And so I never, ever would have said that I was a medium. I went into psychology and counseling and got a master's degree and went into healthcare. And it's very, it was a very clinical program. It's very science-based. And so that's kind of where my focus initially was in my approach to healing and wellness. It was, I got my degree back in 2005. And even from 2005 till now in 2025, when we're talking, the field of psychology and counseling is very, very different. And it was a little bit more restricted back then and a little bit more rigid back then, even than it is today. And so, my approach to helping people was very, very clinical, and it's a little sterile, and it's a little detached, and clinical in a way that I think now I kind of see it as a little cold. But I still was a spiritual person. I was still very open to spiritual things. I still read about spiritual stuff. I still had experiences, but it wasn't until I got into my 30s and I had some like medical concerns and issues that had really made me start going, oh my God, like I've got to get a handle on my nervous system. Like I have too much stress. I had an autoimmune disease that I had a really bad experience with. And I was like, you know what? I think I'm going to do like some Reiki, and I think I'm going to like do meditation. And years prior, I'd had this woman. I ended up, after college, getting married and doing all of that, having a child. And I, in my early 30s, had gone through a separation from my husband. And I had met this woman who was a psychic, who at the time says to me, well, you're psychic. Do you know that, right? And I'm like, yeah, I know that. Because I'm thinking, yeah, I'm intuitive. I know I have that, whatever. It's no big deal. I'm not Sylvia Browne, right? So I kind of brushed it off and carried on with my life. I went through, that separation and all of that. And I kind of I didn't see the woman again. And when I started wanting to do Reiki and meditation, one of the women that I worked with comes to me and says, oh, well, hey, I know this woman, and she does these Reiki classes and she does these meditations, and they're fabulous. You should come. And turns out it's the same woman. And that's too weird. So, and I was getting her newsletter I had for years, and I loved it. And I was like, you know what? I'm like, all right, I'll come. I'm gonna do this. So I start doing some meditation. I had a very profound experience the first time that I meditated, and literally left me shaking and in tears. We went to the other side. I met a guide. And I remember in the meditation just falling to my knees, and it came time to go back to the earth. And I'm standing there going, oh, please don't send me back there. I'm not going back there. And she's like, yes, you are. You have to go. So I came out of it, and I'm like a hot mess. And I also had a spontaneous Kundalini activation during this, which I had no fucking clue what had just happened. I've never had anything like that. I didn't even know what that was at the time. And so I'm sitting there shaking and feeling really weird and off kilter. And so like I pretty much get up and walk out of there in a daze, and then had to go and do some, YouTube research to figure out what had actually happened to me. And it really blew my mind. Like it opened my eyes in this really big way. There were things that came to me in the meditation, things that I saw that I just couldn't explain. And it sort of woke me up a little bit to some of what I had had as experiences as a child. And I remember being like, holy crap, like magic is real. Like magic is real. And there's so much more to the universe than I am even aware of. And I like this stuff. I'm into this stuff. And so I really got into it. I started meditating regularly. I started learning Reiki. And as soon as I started doing Reiki, my third eye popped open again and I started having visions. But this time I was also healing people and helping people with those visions. And I was getting validation on the things that I would see. So it was hard to deny that I had this ability, number one. And number two, I, for the first time, was able to see, like, you can use this to help people. Like, I have this, at that point, I had a long background now as a counselor and an administrator and helping people and healing people around, mental health and mental wellness. And really, that's also emotional health and emotional wellness.
Yeah.
And there's always spirituality interwoven with that. I remember when I was working as a counselor, a lot of times, like, the things that people would bring to me, there's no amount of training that helps you to help people with some of these really profound and existential things that they bring to counseling. And sometimes the best thing that you can say is, I don't have the answers either, because we don't. And I remember there were times I would be praying, like, God, give me the answers. Like, help me help this person. I don't know what to say to help this person. What I know now is I can look back and I know that there were times when he was answering. I was getting the answers. I was getting things that I needed to share with people to help them through those sessions. And as I started getting into Reiki and opening my gifts as a psychic, I realized I can do more. I can do a lot more with these abilities, and I can actually help people with some of those core underlying issues that used to bring them into counseling. And I kind of cracked open that door. And I remember the very first time that, this woman who became my mentor, the psychic I mentioned before, the very first time that I should actually give her a shout out, Christina Leeson. She's freaking amazing woman, amazing psychic, so incredibly gifted. But the first time that I sat down with her, my career was going well. I was a counselor, I was administrator. My career was going well, but I wasn't happy. And overall, my life was good, but I just was really unhappy and unfulfilled. And I couldn't figure out why. And she's like, because you're supposed to be doing this and you're not doing it. And I looked at her and I was like, doing what? And she's like, well, you're a psychic and you're supposed to be doing it. And I'm like, I just start laughing. Like, I just lost it. I'm like, you need to get the hell out of here. I'm a psychic? What? I was like, this is not something that has ever been on my career path as someday I'm going to be a psychic. Yeah. And so I'm like laughing about this. And I'm like, hey, like, you do know what I do for a living? And we have this like little book, the DSM, and it has all these like different disorders. And what we say about people who hear, see, and feel things that other people don't, right? she's like, I'm telling you, this is what you're supposed to be doing. And at that point, I'd had enough experience now, like getting exposed to Reiki and getting exposed to meditation, that I knew she was telling me the truth. And I had always believed in guides. I had always believed in spirit guides. I would talk to my guides. I just didn't receive information back. I didn't know how. I didn't know how to do that. I just knew that they would hear me, and I assumed that they would send help in some way. And I always had synchronicities. I always paid attention to signs and things like that, but not to the degree that I do now that I'm more aware of them. I pay a whole lot more attention at this point than I did back then, but I had awareness of it. And before I had gone to see her, I kind of, honestly, I can be a little sarcastic and I remember being kind of sassy and saying, okay, guides, like if you're there and you're real and you're listening, then I want to know about this and this and this and this. And I listed these like 4 things and I listed them in a specific order. And I forgot about it. And I went to see her. And when I walked in the door, she goes, so your guides are saying, if you want to know about this, 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 and this, and she gives me my list back verbatim, then you need to work on these things. She gives me a list of things they want me to do. And I'm just sitting there like deer in the headlights, like floored, because I'm like, oh, they're real. They heard me and they told you, because I didn't say that to anyone else. I was alone. Like, and so they convinced me. So it's funny. I kind of describe myself, you asked about my spiritual journey. It's like reluctance. I was sort of like, I had to be like peeled back and like opened up to my gifts and my abilities. And then I had to decide to explore them and to commit to them. And my guides, and then my guides kind of had to fight through some of that more analytical science, thinking mind that I had built up. And I tell people, I teach people now to do, oracle cards for themselves and to read them intuitively. And I joke with them that it's not easy, because when I first started doing them, my first thing was, well, there's like 78 cards in the deck. You shuffle them eventually, and one's going to pop out. So what, right? And so my guides knew that. And so, of course, the first 30 days, I pulled cards every day, and every freaking day I get the same exact card.
Really?
Oh, yeah. So that, because my guides knew it had to be mathematically, statistically impossible to prove it, to prove to me that, yes,
that's
we're
so
real.
funny.
Yeah. And that was what really got me, because I'm sitting there going, okay, 78 cards in the deck. And I keep pulling the same one. It's just the same one. It doesn't matter how many times I shuffle them. It doesn't matter how much I mix them up. It's the same one. And so there was this slow process of like unfolding and of shedding some of that more ego-based science brain, that analytical side of my mind that wanted to fight against like what I was and what I could do. And it took time for me to really kind of peel back all those layers of things I had kind of put on top of my gifts and burying them down. And so it's funny, like I was always spiritual. I was never not spiritual, but I certainly didn't see spirituality the same way then as I do now, that I've really expanded and tapped into all that I can actually do.
Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh, I love it. There's so much that I like came to me as you were talking, a lot of similarities, and it's so interesting because, a couple years ago, I wanted to go into, I was getting my master's in social work at Fordham. I thought I wanted to be a counselor as well. And then Reiki, just like you, it just completely opened me up and changed my whole trajectory of my life. So then I got certified in yoga and did the Reiki certs and everything. And I did not enter into the medical field traditionally. And I've played with that idea recently over the last like 2 years. Like I've taken some classes and, thought about, becoming an occupational therapy assistant. And then that didn't feel completely right. And then looking at naturopathic doctorate programs, and that felt good for a little bit. And now it's feeling like, I don't think I really need that, And so I think it's so fascinating that you did go into the medical field. And now you're doing this, right? Are you still doing the counseling?
No. And what's funny is I really hadn't been doing counseling for about 12 years at the point that I came into this path for.
Oh,
because
wow.
I was in
Okay.
administration. So I was a supervisor, and I had taken over a team that was doing like integrated care stuff. So it's for like people that have mental health and also had like physical health issues. And it was more focused at getting them the care that they need across the board, both their medical needs met as well as their mental health needs met. So that was primarily my focus. But what's interesting is, as it unfolded, it felt like an accident. In hindsight, there was absolutely nothing accidental about the path that I ended up on,
Oh,
because
yeah.
that marriage of different aspects of wellness is exactly where they were taking me as they were leading me into this path. But yeah, I did make the decision 2 years ago to completely shift focus and just use my spiritual gifts. So I am now full-time professional psychic medium. I teach all kinds of classes, and I love Reiki, and I do a ton of different Reiki healings that I combine some of my other gifts with. And I love to teach Reiki because I like seeing other people have exactly that experience that you're describing, where, it really opens up that awareness to how much magic there is in the world and how much we can really do, that we're not even aware of. How we just, think about like the idea that you can heal someone with your hands is just amazing. It's
Mhm.
mind blowing.
Yeah, I
And
mean, I believe that, like Jesus was using Reiki to heal with his hands, and it's been around for such a long time. And I mean, I also love the part of your spiritual journey where you're talking about your analytical mind and your science mind. And I'm amazed as well that you have fully jumped into this Reiki path because, you know, I, I have encountered students as well that are like, well, how does it work? And it's really hard to prove scientifically. I'm sure there are more studies now than when I started teaching Reiki a couple years ago, but I think I think it's amazing. And I'm also like, I have all these questions for you as far as, you talked about the DSM, right?
Mhm.
And I just had this conversation with a client of mine. She's very gifted. And I also believe in the sense where you like to teach Reiki and empower people. That's my whole philosophy of healing as well. And I had this client the other day, and she's very gifted. And, she also brought up the fact that mental illness runs in her family. And I wanted to, can we have that conversation of how do we know, or how is it, I mean, I don't feel comfortable because I'm not clinically trained
Right.
to know the difference between, well, this is a mental illness and this is actually spiritual gifts that are happening.
Right. Well, and let's be honest. I mean, as somebody who is clinically trained, I don't think that line is super clear.
Exactly, right? Because like you mentioned before, if someone who is psychic is hearing things, seeing things, well, in the DSM, that looks like schizophrenia or
Right.
something else.
Right. And
It's
and
interesting.
I can tell you from experience, doing this work, that I encounter gifted people all the time where their guides are telling me very clearly this person does not have this thing they were diagnosed with. They are psychic. They are being emotionally affected by other people's energies because they're an empath and they're not
Mm.
managing it. So there's more to this, to the experiences and perceptions I think that people have than what we as the traditional clinical, field of psychology understand or are fully aware of or embracing. And that is one of the things that I have seen, like my awareness of that has really widened. My lens is a lot wider now around the different types of experiences that people can have. And, in some ways that it reminds me of some of the work that I was doing in integrated care, where, you have to understand that even our medical system is very divided. Our mental health system and our medical system, they don't work together. We're not trained together. We don't even know how to work with one another well.
Which is crazy to me.
Right. And so, as a mental health professional who was then leading into integrated care and working more with medical conditions and medical, staff, I already had started having to ask more questions about, well, does this person have anxiety, or is this person consuming too much caffeine? does this person have anxiety, or does this person have a medical condition that is causing symptoms that we're labeling as anxiety? So
Exactly.
I had already had to start kind of like opening up, but when I added in psychic and medium work, then it opens up a whole other layer, another piece of
Oh,
that
yeah.
puzzle as well. That is unfortunately not, it's a little amorphous, and it's a little harder to integrate and harder for people to understand, and not everybody's open to it. So it definitely adds another piece. And, I think, probably we have a lot of people who over the years have gifts who've been mislabeled as having mental illness.
Definitely.
But also, I believe mental illness is real. It's a real thing.
Oh, yeah.
Even my guides will tell me, well, Christine, you can have both. You can have both. You can be psychic and have abilities and lose touch with reality. You can be psychic and have abilities and also have depression and have anxiety or PTSD because you've been through a lot of stuff, and you got to deal with it.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't like to throw the baby out with the bathwater. So it's like, I feel like there's room, and this is something I think is going to be really exciting over the next 15, 20 years as the fields move forward, because I really feel like they're going to blend. And I'm really curious to see how that happens as more people wake up and not only are more open spiritually to having spiritual experiences, but actually are having more spiritual experiences. As we know, those of us who are into the woo-woo, into the spiritual field, understand that we're going through a planetary ascension, and that process is going to awaken more people's gifts and abilities. And I think this question is only going to get louder, not quieter. We're going to have to answer it. And we're going to have to come up with models to understand this more, because it's not so black and white. It's a big gray zone, and you can have both.
Yeah.
So how do we feather that out?
I think you're very on point, and I think it's part of the reason why we can have been connected. Spirit connected us. Is I've been in this woo-woo side for the last, oh man, 12 years, 12, 13 years. And I got the message 2 years ago, okay, you need to be in the medical field. And I took it literally from my guides. I took it, oh, okay, yeah, sure. And jumped back into school. And I've taken, anatomy and physiology. I'm taking biology right now. And I love all this stuff because I love the science. I can't look at science and I can't look at science and not see God. And I can't look at God and not see science. That is me.
I feel the same way. And to me, I've always had this sense. Remember, I had experiences. I could never deny this stuff was real because I had experienced it.
Yeah.
So I never could negate it. But I remember exactly what you're saying. And it's exciting to me because to me, I was like, I'm not afraid of science. I love science. But to me, love it. Science will only support the existence of all the stuff that I'm doing. I love it. Really pursue it. And so I think it's great. And I remember, so I don't think I mentioned this when I was talking earlier, but I went to a Catholic college. I'm not Catholic. I was actually a little nervous to go be, schooled by nuns. Okay. I had tattoos and, had a boyfriend, wasn't married, and all the 9 yards. And so I was a little nervous to even be at this place. I kind of felt like but in the library, I was researching something one day in my grad school experience and came across this book, a big, thick book. And it was a quantum physics book. And it was basically a book on how quantum physics explains why God exists.
Wow. Yeah. I love that so much. Like, yeah, I can't look at nature and not see God. So I definitely, I feel you on that. And it's so interesting. I love how you also mentioned that every part of your path is the path to get you to where you are now. And so I took my guides literally when they were like, go to the medical field. I was like, what do you mean? Like, I hate blood. I don't want to do all that. And I was like, oh, maybe it's OT. And then I was like, no, there was like some things and resistance. And I was like, oh, maybe it's becoming a naturopathic doctor. And then it's like, do I need that? And now over the last like year or so, I've gone to like mental wellness fairs talking about Reiki. tomorrow night I've been invited to talk to a spinal injury association affiliated with the local hospital system about Reiki,
Right.
about what I do and what I know, instead of let me jump into the medical field.
Right.
And I've had, I've worked with a lot of my I say patients, weird. I meant to say clients, have been dealing with physical illness. So I've had a lot of medical mediumship intuition come through too. And it's like, oh, you want me as me in the medical
Right.
field
Right.
helping.
Oh yeah, they want our gifts
Oh,
online. My guides at one time, like they were very clear and they said, we want all of you and we want you all the time. And that was when I had to really grapple with what do I do now? Because, as we know, even though these things they are integrating, and I'm excited when I see, people who are starting to blend or even just incorporate, Reiki and alternative practices into and merging them together with traditional practices. It's awesome. I think we're going to see more and more of that.
yeah.
But I remember like just that, feeling like, how do I do this now? Because, just to give you examples, I'm having experiences. I'm one day, I mentioned I was in administration. One day I'm like checking someone in for an appointment and they come in and I feel a spirit like touching me and trying to get my attention. And I know immediately it's this guy's mother on the other side. And she wants me to give a message to this guy, but he's just there for an appointment and it's not appropriate. It's not the right place. It's not the right setting. And I had to make decisions about what do I do now? How do I handle that? And my guides, I knew that if I stayed and did any type of counseling, I could not do it without my guides because I was like this now with my guides and they're going to talk to me in sessions and are going to give me information and I can't pull them apart anymore. And so that was part of why I ultimately ended up kind of pulling out from the field because I didn't feel I could continue and stay without using it. And I didn't feel I could really be out there with it and stay.
Yeah.
So I got kind of, stuck in the middle. And I don't think that that's going to, in the future, I don't think it's going to be that way so much. I can't tell you how many people I see in the medical fields who are developing these abilities. And
Oh,
that's not an
yeah.
accident. It's not
Also,
an accident.
and when you teach Reiki too, like I've taught it to physical therapists, I've taught it to chiropractors, like I've been invited into medical settings. And I think that this blend, because we are multifaceted beings,
Right.
we are not
We're
just the meat
spiritual
sack.
beings.
Yeah, we're spiritual beings having a human experience. And also, like, for example, I'm going to share that like the body mind spirit connection is real. It's not bullshit. It is real. So I'm just going to share.
Right.
I had a bladder infection 2 weeks ago. And spiritually, the meaning of a bladder infection is suppressed anger and suppressed feelings. And I was dating someone that it was not aligned. And so my body, my mind and my spirit knew. And I love that you said that you've been an empath all your life, and then it feels like gaslighting at times because you know things, but it's not perceived in that way by other people.
Right.
Or like for me, and you talked about you listening to your gut, and someone posted this thing yesterday, and I'm gonna get back to it. Don't worry, I'm making a point. It's coming.
Mm-hmm.
So someone posted the resentment that you have against yourself when you don't listen to your gut is something that needs to be talked about. And I was like, oh God,
Right.
felt
Oh
because
yeah.
I didn't listen to my gut about, this person. And I ended up, okay, so my body was like, oh, okay. So you're not going to listen to your intuition and you're not going to listen to your gut. So maybe you'll listen to the body when it starts to get sick. And so
Right.
I'm just getting back to that whole, the mind body spirit connection is real. I wasn't listening to myself. I was suppressing anger and
Right.
feelings, and it manifested into a bladder infection because,
Yeah.
like, I am a very healthy person typically. Um, I don't manifest a lot of illness, but this is something that came on pretty strong. So I'm just sharing that I'm praying and hoping that we are moving in the direction of merging,
Yeah.
and the way that the healthcare system is here is okay, well, your heart is being affected, go see a cardiologist. But why
Right.
aren't we also looking at the other systems of the body because it's all,
Right.
interconnected.
And it is starting to happen. Even in the
Yeah.
traditional field, it is beginning to happen. That's what my whole program was. But part of my frustration was it just wasn't moving fast enough. Just wasn't moving fast enough for me. And it's amazing, what my team, one of the things that my team was doing before I left my other career was we really had a multidisciplinary team looking holistically at cases for people who had really chronic illnesses. And what you would see was how the emotional and mental health was impacting the body.
Oh,
And
yeah, it's
it's
real.
very real.
I feel
And
like it starts outside of the body first.
oh, I agree. And it's funny because I wasn't totally convinced of that. In my journey, I've gone like full circle. Like, so I went from, there's medical stuff that creates this other stuff. And then, we have to kind of circle back. But
I think
in my
it's
spiritual,
interconnected.
right, as I've opened up, what I've realized is that's not the case, that really everything starts as energy. Everything starts as energy first, and then it sets into the physical. So by the time we're seeing it in the body, that's actually, it's already been brewing,
Yeah. And I will
So,
share, like, as far as that bladder infection, it's like as soon as I made the decision to exit is when my body started feeling better.
right. But they really do overlap and they intertwine together. And it's like, the more I've learned about, chakras and the more healings that I've done where I'm using my abilities and I'm using Reiki, the more that I can see how like interconnected they are. And it's amazing. You can look at what's going on, like what part of the body is affected, and know what, emotions are probably
Oh,
at play
yeah.
here.
Also, you can start to determine, if there's trauma held in the cellular memory in different parts of the body,
Right.
what age it happened at.
Right.
And the more that you work with people, and I know you understand, the
Cool.
more that you work with the people doing these types of, I call them, I used to say shamanic healing, but now I call them spiritual healings. There's a lot of patterning with us, with us as beings, like what we accumulate in the field and where it lives and how to get it
Right.
out. And it's pretty amazing, honestly. After a while, you're like, wow, like it does help you to believe more in oneness and unity consciousness, because it's like we really are all like a lot alike, although we have our
Right.
differences. So yeah, I love that you're doing the work, and I love that you bring this aspect, this expertise into your work as well. I love that so much, and it's just like it's funny. I feel like you and I are like on the other side of the coin, but
Right.
I don't think I don't know. I'm still like I don't think I'm going into the
Well,
medical field. I'm
right.
just
Well,
being me.
but think about this, the quantum field is the missing piece of the puzzle.
Yeah.
It's the missing
And that's
piece.
what I've been doing for 12 years.
Right. And so it needs to be integrated, and part of why I believe a lot of people like myself who have training and backgrounds in the traditional fields are being awoken, and coming into their abilities and into their gifts, is so that they can do that, so that they can support that in happening and do it in a way that is responsible and that is ethical
And
and that
clinically
does
approved.
right. And
And I'm doing this. It
but
is real, but
let's talk about that clinically
sorry,
approved,
I don't know
because
why I
I
keep
can
doing
tell
this.
you I've seen some really disgusting things in the field of even just behavioral health that were clinically approved and probably shouldn't have been. When you really dug deeper into, evidence-based practices and what really qualifies something as evidence-based or not, and what really drives, what we do research on in the first place. Because there's a lot of politics and a lot of money involved in all of that. And the politics drives the money, which drives what gets researched in the first place. And it can take years for for a research study to be approved and then completed, and then for those results to be published as well. So, there's a lot of things that we don't know, but we don't know them because we haven't really looked or explored them either.
Right.
And we haven't cared enough to do so, maybe up to this point. So, yeah.
And I think people in general, people are getting fed up of traditional systems. I see it all the time. I see it in the medical field, and, just myself personally dealing with, mental health stuff over the years, right? Well, my spiritual gifts. And then I would go to like a psychiatrist or a psychologist, and they would say one thing or the other. And it was never any of that. But now I do work with a counselor who is an intuitive. She's clinically trained, but she incorporates all these spiritual practices, and she's the best therapist that I've ever fucking had. She's been on my podcast as well. Her name's Vanessa Perry, and she's amazing. So I love that. She left the clinical field and does her intuitive counseling. And I, even me, as woo-woo as I am, felt safer with her knowing she had a clinical background. So it's interesting, for sure. But
because we have educated people. We have educated people who we would say are not crazy, who are coming into these abilities and are using them and combining them, or beginning to weave them in with some traditional practice. And it's harder to deny it then, right?
Yeah.
It's harder to say that those people don't know what they're doing.
Exactly. Yeah. So I love it. I love that you are, like I said, you have all of that. And I love that your guides were like, we want all of that to show up for people. So
but it was a choice. It was a choice. I think, kind of going back to what you were saying earlier, I think we do get choices, and there's some, there's not always just one way to do something. And even our individual soul is oftentimes given multiple potential pathways to do the same thing. So earlier on, I remember a reading that I had years ago, and I was told, you went into psychology, but you could have went into nursing. You could have went into medicine. You could have went into neuropsych. There was a whole bunch
maybe
of
you would end up where you are.
I still would have come back to the same place. And it's interesting because when I made the decision to leave the field of psychology to focus solely on the spiritual aspects, my guides gave me a choice. They said to me, you can do this in one of these 3 pillars. It doesn't matter which pillar you go into. They're all coming together. They were talking about medical, behavioral health, emotional, mental health, and spirituality. And they said, you can decide which one you want to start in. But, ultimately, we're bringing them together. And so I had a choice. I chose to leave the traditional field because it felt too restrictive to me with what I was starting to see and what I was starting to believe in, and what I felt needed to happen was I felt I had done that already. I had a good handle on that side. It was time to really get in more on the spiritual side, where I would have more flexibility and be able to help other people who are also going through that. And so a lot of times the people that are sent to me are also medical professionals, also kind of going through transitions.
I love that. Yeah. And I love how spirit will do that too. Spirit will send you the clients that are reflecting some aspect of you, or where you've been before, that you can help them through, or where you're at even, that can give you some insight. And I love that. That's also kind of reaffirming that idea of oneness and unity consciousness.
But
and
here's the thing.
Yeah.
And
I love it. You're so excited.
We get it so screwed up. But because everything's spirit, everything's spiritual. So I love what you're saying right now, because the reason I'm getting excited is because
so excited.
This is a known phenomenon in the counseling field already. Okay. It's not an accident. It's not an accident. The clients that come to a specific counselor.
It's got to be a frequency vibrational thing.
And it's a trend. And I did supervision for years, and you would see this. So supervisors would talk about how this would happen. and how weird it was that it would happen. Because whatever a supervisee's crap is, their own emotional crap, whatever they need to reflect on and see, guess what comes into their office repeatedly and completely at random. You would assign them.
So that's in the counseling field?
Totally. You would assign, it's known. We know
I thought it was a
you
spiritual
would assign
thing.
a case to someone, right? And it looks like one thing, doesn't look like anything that would trigger them. And then they get it. And it turns out it's totally something that's going to trigger them. And you didn't do that on purpose. That case didn't come to them on purpose. It wasn't even assigned to them on purpose, but it would happen as a pattern. I can see it in my own practice, but we would see it as supervisors with supervisees. And it was part of their professional growth. They needed to see these things. And from a larger spiritual perspective,
wow,
you can see and go, it's not an accident. There's flow in all of that too.
Yeah.
There's a reason that those clients ended up with those clinicians at that time. It's not an accident. There's things being learned. And there are people, I think, I was in the trauma field primarily, and there's a lot more attention paid to this there in the bidirectionality of the influence that we have on each other. How mirror neurons in the brain work to mirror things back, and how that dynamic happens. Because, I think our field the field of psychology has a sense of like, the counselor not being affected by the client. And biologically speaking, that's not possible. It's actually just not possible.
Yeah.
And before you look into brain science and how human beings are wired, it doesn't work like that. But we have this training and this idea of that, the blank slate, so to speak. It's not real and it doesn't exist. And it's one of the things that we used to have to help other counselors who were becoming counselors to understand and be aware of. And I feel like the trauma field's a little more open to this because they're very understanding of how hearing someone's trauma affects the counselor. It's a bidirectional relationship, whether we want it to be or not.
Right.
And it really fits with kind of what we're talking about with the universe and how the universe works and universal laws work and attraction. I think you were talking a little, how do we attract people and who do we attract and why do we attract them and reflect them and all of that. Right. Totally. It exists, but we just don't call it that.
That
in
is
the field of
so
psychology, don't call it woo woo.
Oh my God. I'm so glad that you shared all that. Cause like for a while I was like, yeah, it just felt spiritual, but I guess again, the scientific and the spiritual, like
they're like
intertwined. Like, does one exist without the other?
No.
Like, no.
Spirit is in everything, and we're all spiritual beings who are here having this experience together.
Like, this is a really silly example, but my bio professor yesterday was talking about how her favorite animal is a polar bear because it has black skin, which keeps it warm in the winter, and its fur is actually like clear and all this stuff. And all I could think about was like, oh my God, like how do you like have an animal like that designed to live in the Arctic and the cold and whatever, and it has all these amazing adaptations to survive that. Or then we were, looking at photosynthesis and how like plants take the energy from the sun, convert it into glucose, and then we eat the plants. Like what? Like all of it to me, it's like, wow, like how can you look at that and not be like, and not believe in God? Like, I don't know. It's just also like the color of the cardinals that come and visit me all the time. Like, I don't look at that and like not see God. So I'm loving this. I love this conversation so much.
Like just, how we get here. I mean,
I
wasn't even open to this yet. And when my daughter was born, I literally, my ex-husband was like making fun of me because I remember the first week we brought her home from the hospital. I spent so much time, I was just sitting there staring at her. And he's like, what's going on? And I'm like, I just can't get over how amazing it is that like she wasn't here and now she is. Like she wasn't here and now she is.
Yeah.
And how did that happen? And he's like, you're not over that yet? And I'm like, I am never going to be over that.
Yeah, so that cool. In itself, the way that the body prepares itself and just everything, even the self-healing mechanisms in the body are amazing.
And we've forgotten about them.
Well, exactly. And now it's like we're getting back into herbalism and holistic and naturopathy and all this stuff. And so Yeah, I love it. I love that these conversations are happening and that changes are happening and people
Well,
are advocating for themselves too.
and I think that, to speak to one of the points you made earlier about, hey, people are sort of losing, their love interest around, or their love for, some of the traditional models. It's because they've been let down.
Oh, well,
They've been
yeah.
let down, and they've also been let down, I feel like, around medicines as well. Not that medicine doesn't have a purpose or that people shouldn't take medication, because, we need medications, and medications have helped human beings in lots of ways. But we also have medications that have toxins in them, and we have medications that have been created to, supplement for people not getting things that they should be getting in their natural environment. And why is that? So, like, if we go back to
Well,
more
it's
holistic,
shortcuts and money.
viewpoint, right? But if we look more holistically at, like, healthcare and wellness, and that there are simpler ways to get those needs met, but it's just, those things require shifting of lifestyle. They require us to
Yes.
make some changes.
Well, and we live in an instant gratification society now. And it's
Right.
like, instead of treating the root, which is what naturopathy and holistic practitioners do, they're treating a symptom and putting a
Yeah.
band-aid. So then it's like, actually, instead of solving, it's actually can create more problems with the other body systems and body functions. So I hear
Yeah.
exactly what you're
So,
saying.
so there's a lot of people who, they're getting tired of that, and they're ready to make the changes. And
Mhm.
that's the thing, like, I think in a lot of ways we can help people to begin to do that when they're motivated to do it. And it's amazing now. I feel like I hear so much more often, like, doctors and nurses even beginning to pay more attention to nutrition and to
Oh,
request
yeah.
training in nutrition to help their clients
Well,
or
to
to help
me,
their
that blows my
patients.
mind that that's not part of it.
Right. Me too. When I heard that, I was like blown away. But it's interesting, I like I said, I'm not anti-medication.
Oh, no, I'm
But
not
the
either.
more that I work and do healings on people, and I get information from my guides, I get information from spirit, many times they will prefer the whole food version of something as the treatment for someone, instead of, like, the supplement. Sometimes
Mm-hmm.
I'll be told this person would do well with a supplement, but a lot of times they'll tell me, no, they need to actually eat the food, or they'll tell me ways that the person might tolerate it better if it's something the person probably isn't going to like, like kale or something like that, because some people don't like it, right?
Mm-hmm.
But also they'll tell me teas, rather than a supplement.
Mm.
And I think it has to do with that. It doesn't have all the fillers, and it doesn't have, that process behind it where it can get contaminated, and where it's harder actually for the body sometimes to process or to digest. And it doesn't have maybe some of the negative side effects that we can get from some of those other ways of getting it, through
Mm-hmm.
medications. So yeah, there's something to be said about, that maybe there's simpler answers sometimes that we've simply gotten away from, or we've overlooked how powerful those simple answers actually can be.
Yeah. I love that you mentioned the teas too, because I have like a tea magic book, and I try to go to the holistic whole food teas.
Mhm.
I'll do all of that before I resort to getting a medication. It just depends on how long I've let my body get out of
Right. And
whack.
that's key. Yeah, because there's some things like, I always say, once something's in the physical, we have to treat the
Like for the
physical.
bladder
You can't
infection,
pray
I
the
got an
bladder infection
antibiotic.
away. I mean, would I say that a miracle is not possible? Of course not. Of course, a miracle could occur. But is that the smartest, bestest way to treat something once we've got it in the body? No, we need to pay attention to the body. We got to heal it, right?
It's totally interesting too. I just had a light bulb moment just even right here now, is that the moment that I accepted that I had to exit the relationship, was also the moment that I had to accept that I had let this bladder infection get to a point where I required an antibiotic.
Right.
And so it was like that moment of acceptance of both that I started to heal. So
Right.
that just came to me
Right.
right
Which is
now.
why you can start to view Reiki and energy healing and chakra clearing and even, mental health treatment, getting help, healing your traumas, working through your shadows, working through your feelings and talking them out as preventive care.
Yes, definitely. It's all part of it. So,
Yeah.
oh my gosh, I've just loved this conversation so
So
much.
cool.
I know we've literally are almost at an hour, so I like to give the end of the episode to you if there's something that you're feeling called to share, or if spirit, whatever you feel moved to share. If you have anything, I mean, we did share a lot.
It's not about, I think they're kind of calling me to go back to what I said earlier about, look, we can't throw the baby out with the bathwater. It's
Right.
about finding ways to integrate it. It's about finding ways to bring it together. And the ultimate purpose is to help people. The ultimate purpose is what I think everyone, no matter what aspect of the field they're in, is there for, which is to help people heal, to help people be the best versions of themselves. And we can do that better when we're working together.
Yeah.
When we're targeting all aspects of wellness and really integrating them more fully.
I love it. Yes, yes, yes. Because like like you, I'm not against medicine, and I mean, all of that exists. Again, I can't look at some of that technology and think that God doesn't exist again. So it's
Right.
like all of it is meant for us, and I agree with the blending, and I hope to see more of that in the future. But thank you so much for your time today and your energy and your conversation. To the listeners, or if you're watching this on YouTube, if you feel called to connect with Christine, how can people connect with you?
So my business name is Souls Rising, and my website is www.souls-rising.com. All information that you need on how to contact me, schedule an appointment, is there. And my email is christine.ellis, that's ELLIS, at souls-rising.com. So you can reach out and I'd be happy to give you more information or get you scheduled.
Awesome. And you can work with Christine virtually. She's in the Northeast, but I have worked with her like this. So definitely reach out if you're feeling called.
Yeah, I do phone and Zoom sessions. I also do offer distance healings as well. So
awesome. Well, thank you so much. And if anyone is interested in coming on the podcast, telling their story, or if you know anybody that might be an interesting guest, please send them my way. I am Linzala Yoga on Instagram, and my website is www.linzalayoga.com. Lindsay Warwick on Facebook. So yeah, just would love to hear you tell your story. Thank you so much again, Christine, and I'm wishing everybody a beautiful week.
thanks.